Today I am joined once again by Katie, who has been suffering from back and neck pain for over 15 years. Today we're going to look at the power column to expand her relationship with herself, help her understand it, and know what to do about it. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. Katie, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me again, Dan.
Okay, so I feel that we're off to a great start. It doesn't really matter what I think. It really matters what you think. But just from having heard from you, I pretty much know you're on the same page about that. We've mapped out these great emotional themes. We've come a long way on the emotions column. Last time we met about doubt, and I think we hit on several key points, but one of them was that your doubts sometimes mirror your psychology, and that allowed you to see them as doubts, to see that, no, this probably isn't likely to be true because it's matching my psychology so much. So we'll continue to work on both of those columns, how to use them. You know, you're going to use the emotions column for those acute symptoms to think about what's happening in your emotional world that is requiring a distraction with a symptom. We're going to use the doubt column for those seemingly chronic symptoms, which was largely what you've been having with the neck pain. And to use observe, articulate, and counter, that kind of mantra I use in the doubt column, to keep bringing up more doubts and get them answered. And of course, you can rely on me to get those answered. Now what we're going to do today is to dive into the power column. It's the third column. I think it's great that there's only 3 columns, but they actually cover the whole territory. So you're familiar with my process and my system, so I'm kind of explaining something to you that you already know a little bit, but this is also partially for the people who will watch this. So the power column is how we think about your relationship with you. And I know along the way, when we went through the emotional themes and when we went through some of your doubts, we hit on some of the things that go on in your relationship with you. And so it's not like we haven't touched on this at all. But the power column is where we're really going to dive into it and see it in its kind of explicit form. So I wanted to explain something, again, you may already know, but the 2 main tasks of the power column. One is to build this thing called the core narrative. You're familiar with this?
Yes.
Okay. So the core narrative is the story of your suffering self. We all have lots of different aspects of who we are. A lot of times people will say, well, I didn't suffer all the time. And I'm like, I know. But there's a story that's just about your suffering self, how you've suffered in your life. And our job is to get that laid out so clearly that you will do something that I call accepting the fullness of your trauma. And the key word there is actually fullness. Because generally speaking, we've accepted our trauma some. We know what it is. We're not unfamiliar with it. But the fullness is to recognize it in full, to not have not be pulling any punches with ourselves about what happened. And I don't mean that in a cruel way. I mean it in a relieving way. Because by doing that, you kind of get full self-empathy for the first time in some way. So that's actually largely what we're going to do today. But the second task is about learning to assess when you're in power or not. And that can be with yourself, it can be with others, or it can even be with your symptoms. Anytime you're out of power, I want to help you recognize it, be able to consider that there's a way to climb back into power, or maybe to climb into power for the first time, and that there are things you can do to do that. And for many people, that can be a totally foreign concept. For others, they've done it in some areas, but not others. For others, they might think, well, I can do it in this one area, but I can't imagine I can do it here. So those are the 2 things we're going to look at. But through doing the core narrative, we're going to get a sense of when you're out of power or not. So we're kind of doing both at the same time here at first. And that's the work of the power column when we start off. Does this all make sense to you so far?
Yeah, it sounds really good.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is lay out for you what the core narrative is. The core narrative is essentially 3 sentences. Sometimes it's a bit longer. Sometimes people need to build in a couple extra sentences because it's a lot of material to get in there at once. But the bare bones of it is that it's 3 sentences. The first sentence is, how did you suffer in your life primarily? If we had to sum it up in one sentence, what would it be? One way of thinking about this, Katie, is that if you took all of those, let's say 12 themes, I think we got 12 from the emotions column, and we had to sum them up in one sentence, what would it be? Now, that could feel overwhelming at first, but don't worry, I'm here with you. I'll help you do that. It's going to capture the biggest, broadest area of what happened to you. And we're just going to try to get it as accurate as possible. Remember, everything we do on the mind-body map with these columns, it's a rough draft. We can come back to it. There's no pressure to get it right exactly this first time. But that first sentence is exactly what I just said. It is the story of how you suffered. And a lot of it will relate to your childhood because that's when a lot of this suffering was formed. But there may be some other things that fit into that first sentence. The second sentence is how it impacted you. And usually this is where people find the suffering of their adult lives. That how they grew up and the core suffering they struggled through informed how they interacted at their job, in relationships, in their family life, in their relationship with themselves. And we're going to just identify some of the key ways in which you were impacted. The third sentence, you'll need probably even more help from me than in the first two, although you'll get help from me in all three. The third sentence is, what are you going to do to live differently? To even envision it. And I'm not even going to touch that yet. I think it's better to get the first two sentences down. As I always say this, get the first two sentences down, then we'll deal with the third. We'll have much more idea of what can be done when we hear what happened and what needs to be done. And I'm the one who will know more about what can be done. So don't worry too much about that one. Let's worry about the first two, okay? We're going to do that. We can get into the other thing the other task of the power column, assessing power. We're going to touch base on that today as well. But first, let's get to this core narrative. So here's what I want to do. We have, I think, as I said, 12 themes. If we had to sum it up in one sentence, I want you to take a stab at this, a kind of rough draft. And by the way, when we take a stab at it, you could go first or I could go first. It doesn't matter who, because what we're doing is we're putting the information out there and getting it honed, kind of like we did with the emotional themes. You remember when I would say something to you and you'd be like, everything's right but this word.
Yeah.
You're going to know. You're going to know if we nailed it or not. So if you, let's say you're meeting me for the first time and I'm telling you, tell me how you've suffered, and you've got to get it in one sentence. Take a stab at it. Or do you want me to?
I mean, I'm curious. I know what my answer is. I'm just curious what you would think it should be from us talking.
Well, I'm gonna put that in too. You know, usually when people do the core narrative with me anyway, it's a collaborative effort. Okay. So don't worry, you're gonna get my viewpoint. But I want to start with where you start. And I listen for key words that you might say. I listen for things that maybe you left out that I see as important, or maybe that you represented in a way that was a little, that I think we could adjust to be more helpful to you. So just say it and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And I'm going to jot this down because it helps me to take notes.
I guess I would say I'm trying not to overthink it. The thing that just jumped into my mind first that my gut says is I suffered because I was not accepted. And I was not accepted in on a lot of different levels, in many different venues and avenues in my life, starting from when I was really young. So just feeling not accepted, not good enough. That's probably in my mind the biggest one, if not one of the biggest ones.
Okay. This is a very good start. It does feel like it is central. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look back at our themes. And I'm going to see what's left out here. So you mentioned not feeling accepted, but there were a lot of things in our themes about you then, and you did mention not feeling good enough. But I think we want to represent really strongly here. You really haven't felt that you're good enough. I mean, in a pretty profound way. So we want to beef up that. I'm just going to make a note of that. I'm just going to say beef up the not good enough aspect, because the thing is, the core narrative is supposed to be very, very powerful and deep. If it's really effective, it actually kind of hurts to read almost. So
the thing that really got me on our first day is feeling not good enough or not valid. Like first I was saying, as a dancer, as an artist, as a family member, but then you sort of said, well, maybe you just don't feel valid as a person.
Yes.
Like, and right. I was saying I felt sort of like, even as bad as I'm a waste of resources, sometimes I feel so invalid as a person. And that was what got me really emotional. And I could feel like getting choked up talking about it now, because that's like really freaking upsetting.
It really is. And something that I like to highlight for people about the core narrative is that in many ways, as long as it's accurate, the more extreme the language is, the better. Because the core narrative is designed to get you access to just how bad it hurt. And the reason for that is it's supposed to be a shorthand that reminds you of who you've been and what's at stake and what, how bad it's been. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think not good enough, validity, feeling invisible, feeling like you were a waste of resources. That hurts me even just to think about.
For me to even think of that phrase to describe myself, I mean, I didn't think of it just for talking to you. I've been like carrying that around for a while.
I know.
I mean, that's so effed up.
It is, and you can see how you've been hurting so much. So it's very key that we get it in there. So I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else about the emotions, the emotional themes that you feel like we've got to bring in? I see at least one other element, which is that the environment, I would say, was not safe and afforded you no protection. Something along those lines. Does that ring true?
Yes, those are the exact ones that I was just going to bring in as also feeling really powerful.
Okay. Anything else? I think feeling like an imposter.
I mean, that just sort of gets rolled up in not feeling good enough. That one doesn't even feel as powerful to me. Okay,
that's what we use as our guidepost, right? Now, for some people, the imposter syndrome could be like the dominant factor, but it's not for you. You're recognizing, no, what's really underneath it all. So do you think we have it in what we mentioned?
Yeah.
One more question. What about the kind of living a double life aspect? Maybe that fits in the second sentence. Maybe that's a way it impacted you. I'll make a note of that.
And that is all based around like shame and having to hide who I truly am and not being able to show or express, even to the people really close to me. I can't be myself.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just making a note. These are all things. It's interesting because the first two sentences, in some ways, they can have a lot of overlap, but they afford you two different opportunities to look at the same kind of thing. And the first sentence is supposed to be broader and capture the big picture. And the second sentence is supposed to zoom in and say, well, but what happened because of this? We've got all the makings of both, okay? Let's revisit that first sentence. Here's what you wrote so far. I suffered because I was not accepted on a lot of different levels and in different places, starting from when I was really young. Okay? You're not wrong about that, but it feels like it doesn't capture everything that we just said. I now want to talk about what it resulted in. So I would say, and I want to check in with you about this language. Instead of saying I was not accepted, does it feel more powerful to say that you were rejected?
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. Yep. So note that's something that I do here in the core narratives. I look for the more powerful words, because when you read this later, it's not that I ever want you to hurt, but you've been hurting, and I want this to accurately reflect it.
I've
So
also like intellectualized so much of this that if I make it too mild, it's not going to be effective to me.
that's right. So actually, I'm going to also change, instead of just I suffered, I'm going to change it to I suffered profoundly. Because remember, we're trying to accept the fullness of your trauma. We got to get at the fullness. You didn't just suffer. We could even change it to like catastrophically. Something really, really strong. What's the word that jumps out at you for it?
Yeah, like catastrophically is
Okay.
great.
Good. Not good.
Because
that
I
it happened,
also
but-
have downplayed it to myself so much, but really it just flipped over and completely changed my life.
Yep. So
So it
I
was
suffered.
catastrophic.
I suffered catastrophically in ways that altered my whole life. See how powerful that is? And it's accurate too.
It also it impacted the path of my life. It like completely changed the path of my life or stopped the path of my life.
Yep. So I'll say this. I suffered catastrophically in ways that altered my whole life's path because I was rejected. Now, I'm going to say something pretty extreme here, but I do think it's true. Because I was rejected for everything that I am.
Yeah.
What's important about that is you weren't just rejected because, you were, look, you were rejected like for body type as a dancer. But the problem is it all folded into a bigger picture of rejection. There wasn't anybody pulling you in and saying, "You're my Katie. You're good the way you are." You did not get that. Is that right?
Yeah, it makes me like totally upset for you to even say that because
Right.
it's true.
Yes. And I know it's true, and I'm sorry it's true, but this is how we accept the fullness is to see it. Now, when we get to sentence 3, you're not going to have to live this way. So don't worry. This is your past. And it's a painful past, and it's part of the reason you've had such pain.
Yeah.
Because remember, we're trying to break you through to not have the pain, and it wasn't getting done by the typical kind of emotions column sort of way where you could just discover some unconscious stuff. There were 2 reasons for that. One, you had doubt that was lingering, a lot of the time related to your psychology and that form. But I think this is the biggest one, is that you were hurting on a much more profound level. Because people can get pain from one emotional thing that's really upsetting that they don't want to know about. But for people who have very upsetting things throughout their whole lives, and they're carrying that around with them, that can be much more lasting.
Yeah.
Once we nail this, it'll start to break free.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing. I can't even hardly imagine that.
I know, but I've seen it happen, and I also know why it happens. In the power column, the job is to receive the communication of the symptoms. The symptoms are basically telling you, Katie, do you know how badly you've been hurting? For 15 years, they've been telling you, this is how bad it's been. Maybe even worse. But they're communicating to you. So we're receiving the communication here, okay? And you can feel it because we're starting to translate it into emotions in the power column.
Yep.
Okay, let's keep going. I suffered catastrophically in ways that altered my whole life's path because I was rejected for everything that I am.
Yeah.
On a lot of different levels. Do we want to say in every place I found? Was it, or were there some exceptions? Because we do want it to be accurate.
I don't even know if in a lot of different levels or places is even necessary because...
Yeah, maybe we summed it up in everything that I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
That helps
although
me
I do
more
think,
because... Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because I was rejected for everything that I am, but by who? By my family, I know. Who else? That could be enough.
It was like family, friends, peers, and I don't know who you would call like, teachers or other adults or mentors that were supposed to be.
I'm going to call it communities. That's what I was thinking about. So I was rejected for everything that I am by my family, friends, peers, and communities, starting from when I was, starting from the very beginning. What?
Yeah, when I was young. I mean, 3, 4.
Okay, now that's just the first you can remember of it. So it may
Yeah.
have been going on earlier. So I'm going to say starting from when I was very, very young.
Yeah.
And I add the second very because I'm building towards that fullness concept. So let me ask you, does this sentence, I feel like there's one thing, there's two things missing. Hold on a second. I'm going to back up. I suffered catastrophically in ways that altered my whole life's path because I was rejected for everything that I am by my family, friends, peers, and communities, starting from when I was very, very young, which left me feeling completely invalid, as if my environment could never be safe, and as if I would always have to hide who I was from everyone.
Yeah, and also to protect myself, like a very much feeling of being alone. Unsafe and alone are sort of the two main themes that I think I felt.
Yes. Okay, hold on. I almost have it. So, which left me feeling completely invalid, as if my environment could never be safe, as if I was all alone in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and as if I would always have to hide who I was to protect myself from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long sentence, but it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel exactly right to you? That's what matters.
Yep, that's everything.
Okay. So that's sentence one. And that was really strong work we just did. Do you see how we crafted it? I mean, you brought me the basic nuggets. We used the emotions column themes to see what's the major parts that were missing that we could fold in here. And we brought them in. We even edited out the ones that were like, that one's important, but it's not as central.
Yeah.
And then we made it extreme but accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
It feels very heavy, which seems like you hit it right on the head.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want in a core narrative. Now we're going to move to the second sentence. What are the ways that it impacted you? Now, here is where we're going to build in how not feeling good enough played out, whether it was dancing, whether it was relationships, whether it was living the double life, or whether it involved feeling like a waste of resources, because we know how powerful that statement is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a stab at it. If you had to say how this impacted you, what would you say? And there's no wrong answer. This is all building a draft.
It impacted me by me having to hide my true self, which I guess means portraying a more palatable version that seemed fake. So I had to portray like a fake version of me, which was exhausting. It impacted me by making me want to like do self-destructive things or make bad choices.
Okay, I'm just making some notes on this. I'm going to read it back to you, my notes, because ultimately I hear what you say. I translate it into how I would say it, and then you translate it back. And that's part of how we get to where we're going. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So, which was, made me, hold on one second. Have to hide. Okay, so I'm thinking, this made me have to hide my true self, portraying a fake version of me, which was exhausting. We need to punch that up a little bit. And made me deeply vulnerable to acts of self-destruction living a double life,
Yeah. Dangerous decisions.
making dangerous decisions that almost led to
It almost killed me.
it almost killed you, right? So I'm going to put that in here.
Truth, 100% truthfully. So,
Right. Okay. So we've got, this made me have to hide my true self. I'm going to say from the world because see how that brings up the intensity? Portraying a fake version of me, which was exhausting. And I want another adjective in here that captures, because it wasn't just exhausting. I would think it was also enraging. Maybe.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to say it was exhausting, enraging, and confirmed my invalidation, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because people accepted it. They liked that other version, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
So then what did it mean about the real you?
They must have, because I kept it on for so long.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so, which was exhausting, enraging, and confirmed my invalidation, and made me deeply vulnerable to acts of destruction, living a double life, making dangerous decisions that almost led to my death. I would add, causing me to abandon, or to think I had to abandon, my true passions, and settle for something lesser so that I would not end up being the waste of a resource, waste of resources I felt myself to be. We almost have it, but there's something missing. The thing that I think is missing here is how it destroyed your relationship with you. Because it did all of these things, and that was horrible. But it also destroyed your relationship with you.
That might even be the biggest thing. And I don't even know when my relationship with me was not destroyed. Like when it was, I can't remember when it was strong.
Well, actually, it's right along the lines of what I was thinking. I'm going to start this sentence with, this prevented me from developing a good relationship with myself. Because I had to hide my true self from the world and even from me.
Yeah.
Portraying a fake version of me, which was exhausting, enraging, and confirmed my invalidation, and made me deeply vulnerable to acts of self-destruction, living a double life, making dangerous decisions that almost led to my death, causing me to think I had to abandon my true passions and settle for something lesser so that I would not end up being the waste of resources I felt myself to be.
Mm-hmm. I guess the only part of that doesn't land as much is abandon my true passions. I mean, I am an artist now, which is sort of like, I would go a little fake saying that because I do get to pursue one of my passions as my career.
So I'm going to change it to causing me to stray from my true passions at times. Because I know you did with dance. Does that feel more accurate? Now, I do want to say, you just did exactly what I want people to do when they're building their core narrative. If something doesn't feel exactly right, it's not good enough.
Right.
Now that we changed that, how does this feel?
Good.
Okay.
That's great.
We've got the first sentence. We've got the second sentence. And one of the reasons these things are helpful, it's not like you're going to read this over all the time. But it's the doing the core narrative that is what leads to change. You're seeing more clearly. I mean, think about how emotional you can get thinking about some of these things. The phrase waste of resources jumping out at you in a different way, or recognizing that not only was this exhausting, this fake version of you, but it was enraging, or that it confirmed the invalidation. I mean, all of these things, these sentences are so packed with meaning that you'll take them in. You will integrate them into how you think about you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why we never even bother to touch the third sentence until we've got these two down. But now that we have these two down, what needs to change? And I know you might need my help with that. But what are some of the elements that need to change here? I'll make some notes as we go.
I guess my overwhelming feeling, or always my first thought, is that I need to be better to myself, accept myself, my true self, let go of the heavy amount of shame. Like a big, heavy weight of shame is what I have carried for a long, long, long time. So, and I'm not talking about like little self-care things or something. I'm talking about being able to
we're talking the big
essentially
picture stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Essentially accept myself, care for myself, feel like I'm the parent that wasn't there to care for me, care for myself like I do for my 3-year-old son, care for myself as much as I do for my 3-year-old son.
Oh, I like that.
Because that's huge. I would throw myself in front of a car for him or something without even thinking about it.
That's right. And could anyone ever care for you like that? And you've got to be one of them.
And when you ask that, like, no is just what immediately jumps to me. No, of course no one cares for me like that.
Right.
Because who am I?
But here's another question. Are you going to accept that viewpoint on you anymore?
No, I want to get rid of it. It's my go-to, and so it's programmed into me from all these years of being like this, but it's not okay.
I'm just making notes. So I'm just going to read some of the notes that I have. I don't know how we'll put it into sentence form yet, but there's I need to be better to myself. But I think as you developed it, we got even stronger with that. So I don't think we need that, because we have things like care for myself and be the parent to myself I didn't have, care for myself as much as I do for my 3-year-old son. Those encapsulate I need to be better to myself, right?
Yeah.
But they do it in a much more powerful form. Yeah. And that's what we're looking for here. Because we want a reminder for you. If you say to yourself in a kind of vanilla, general way, I need to be better to myself, it's very easy to not see that, not commit to it. But if you say, I need to treat myself like I treat my 3-year-old son.
Yeah.
That makes us face it. Are we treating ourselves like that?
Right.
Like I've been really, really good to lots of people. Have I been good to me? Not until recent years.
Yeah.
And sometimes not even now. So I got to keep working on it. Right? Okay, so I'm going to jump back. Accepting your true self fully. That's one thing. Seeing your validity and the great aspects of you. I put that in there because I think sometimes you can be viewing it from a spectrum of hating myself to not hating myself. Yep. And we got to take it even a step further. We got to take it to liking you.
Ugh, I feel like, ooh, geez.
So, all right, that's really important. So I'm going to say learning to actually like and love myself. Listen, this third sentence is aspirational. We're not going to achieve it today. Of course not. When it comes to the power column, what you're going to do is you're going to take these two first sentences and live in it for a bit. That's what processing the fullness of your trauma is about. You don't get to jump to sentence 3, but sentence 3 is aspirational. It sets out where we're headed. I have to help you get there. You have to help you get there. We're not getting there today, but at least we're setting the roadmap for it. Does that make
And I
sense?
do want to love myself, even if I am saying, ooh, like this is so cringy and weird and hard. If we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, I want to treat myself as good as I treat Desmond, who is my son, I love him with all my heart. I would love to love myself that same way.
That's right. So I kind of changed some of that to learning to actually like and love myself without cringing and knowing I deserve it.
Yeah.
That captures where you're at, I think,
Yeah.
better. I'm going to keep going. Letting go of the heavy weight of shame. I put this down. Take only my own account of who I am and what my value is. That's going to be a big one.
Okay.
Not letting society dictate.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting the fullness of your trauma. I like to build that into virtually any core narrative because it reminds you about these first two sentences.
Yeah.
And it helps you remember, I've been through a lot.
I have downplayed these traumas for such a
Right.
long time, and I downplayed them really small, and then just pushed them in the back and carried them around, and that
right.
is
So
why
I
I've
added,
been in pain for so long.
I think that's right. I said, so that I never downplay them again. Accept the fullness of my trauma so that I never downplay them again. The key word there is
Right.
never. Never.
Yeah.
Never. Okay? And then care for myself and be the parent to myself I didn't have. Care for myself as much as I do for my 3-year-old son. I also put, I won't accept my old viewpoint on me and will fight for me. One thing that is usually in most of my core narratives is that I want you to learn to be ferociously in your own corner. Have you heard me say that before?
Mm-hmm.
Well, everything we just said is it's a more specified version of that. You were taught by the world that you were not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
That phrase, a waste of resources, you didn't make that statement. They did. So I think you have to, this is another one that I say for a lot of core narratives, you have to fight an outright rebellion against these ways you've been portrayed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to be that determined. And otherwise, you continue to be part of the portrayal. Okay. I think we have most of the key elements. Do you feel like we need to add anything? Is there anything missing in what you'd hope for aspirationally?
No, I think we got it.
Okay. So I'm going to try it in a sentence, or do you want to?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. This is a rough draft. We'll edit it as needed, but
okay.
I will now. I realize it's not going to happen today, but this is aspirational. Yeah. I will now. I'm going to start with fight a rebellion against the ways I have been portrayed, so that I do not join that view of me and can accept my true self as someone who is valid, completely worth liking and loving, and deserving of caring for myself like I would my... Is there an adjective that you would describe your son as in here?
I think 3-year-old son is good.
That captures it enough.
Even if I keep this as years go on, I think it's
know.
good to remember caring for a young child who requires a lot.
I agree, because that's what you needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all need. So, and deserving of caring for myself, just like I care for my 3-year-old son. I'm going to say guarding him with my life.
Yeah.
guarding him with my life. Give me 1 second. Okay, hold on. I'm going to back up. I want to read it. I will now fight a rebellion against the... I'm going to fight an everyday rebellion against the ways I have been portrayed so that I do not join that view of me and can accept my true self as someone who is valid, completely worth liking and loving, and deserving of caring for myself, just like I care for my 3-year-old son, guarding him with my life, and expecting that anyone new in my world will join me in showing me this respect and love.
Perfect.
Is there anything you would add?
No, that's good you added that at the end, because I was going to say that I got out of like a dysfunctional relationship earlier this year, and I started a new relationship that's really healthy and wonderful. And the person that I'm with, the way that he sees me, like that's the way I would love to see myself, as being smart and ambitious and sensitive and powerful, like all of these things that he says to me all the time. I aspire to see myself as good as how he sees me.
Yeah. And listen, I added one other thing because you mentioned shame, and I felt we needed to get that in there. So I'm going to read back to you the sentence I have now.
Yeah.
Okay. I will now fight an everyday rebellion against the ways I have been portrayed so that I do not join that view of me and can accept my true self as someone who is valid, completely worth liking and loving, and deserving of caring for myself, just like I care for my 3-year-old son, guarding him with my life. So I can let go of any shame and self-hate. See that my suffering was not my own doing. That's another thing I added.
Yeah.
And expecting that anyone new in my world will join me in showing me this respect and love. Did we miss anything?
No, that's good.
Okay. So we have just built your core narrative.
It's also good that you said not my own doing, because I've also pinned a lot of this on me, like all of this is my fault.
Yeah. Well, you know, Katie, this is one of the reasons why it can be particularly useful to build a core narrative with me. And it's one of the reasons that people, when they come to the seminars and the groups, or they do something like this, and they get the direct time with me, I'm not saying it's because of me, but I do understand what are the elements that are needed here. And if even one of these elements is missed in too large a measure, you can't accept the fullness of your trauma. You can't see fully what happened to you or what needs to change. So this feels very complete to me based on what I know of you.
Yeah.
And how much it's resonating with you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And it's essential it's essential that I've had your, your feedback and your guidance in doing this to see the things that I can't see.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would say, I appreciate the kind words, but one thing that I would say is, isn't this interesting? We've only met for 3 sessions.
I know.
This to me feels like the kind of thing that you could get to after maybe 5 years of therapy.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt to me. When I started operating in this kind of columns way with myself, it blew the doors off of all the work that I had done in the past. It's also enhanced the therapy that I do now as a therapist and as a patient, because I understand me at this level. And I never stray from it. One of the nice things about this core narrative is you will now be able to use this core narrative to measure each individual moment, which brings us to the second task of the power column, which we'll spend a little bit of time on today before we wrap up.
Okay.
You're now going to go through your moments and assess, am I in power or not? And one of the ways you can do it is to see, is this moment right now mirroring how I suffered? Is it mirroring the ways that impacted me? Or am I taking the opportunity to live like the third sentence? That's one way that you assess power and do something about it. But another way is a little more general, though it's got this in the background. Do you know what I mean when I would ask you, do you feel in power at a given moment? I'm going to do it right now. Do you feel in power right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel good right now. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel in power right now.
You just answered the best part of the question, though, or the best way of answering the question is I feel good. Because ultimately that's what power is about. Do you feel good or not? If you don't, you're out of power.
Right.
If you do, you're in it. And if you're in it, keep living there.
Gosh, I've been so out of power for so much of my days for so long.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely know that.
Right.
Victimizing myself.
Well, although also minimizing how much you've suffered at the same time, it's really interesting.
Sure.
So
Sure.
What we're going to do is reverse that. We're going to help you accept fully what you've suffered and then help you feel that there's always an option in any given moment to climb back into power. So that's part of what I'm going to want you to do. Assess for power, figure out what knocked you out of power, and then make a decision about what would be the powerful move of the moment. And one of the people I've trained in this system pointed something out to me that was useful, which is it's not really the powerful thing at the moment. It's a powerful thing. There's going to be many options. Find one of the powerful things for you, the thing that can return you to power. So if I'm interacting with somebody and I'm feeling out of power with them, I could remind myself, why do I care so much what this person thinks? I'm just meeting them. They don't know about me. I remember who I am. I remember what I've been through. I return to my relationship with me for power. You may have heard me refer to something called the power of aloneness. And if not, I'll explain it now. But the power of aloneness is the ability to connect in our lives to the idea that we are on a journey with ourselves. There's no one else in the picture. All of those people who plagued us and gave us bad feelings about ourselves all those years, it turns out they have no power over us at any given moment anymore. Not when we have a chance to climb back into power. So
that's great.
We've just done a huge amount of the power column work in one session. You may need to work at this, and you can work at it on your own. You can, email me if you need some help. If you decide you want to come to the groups, I don't know if that's something you can do, but it's a way that we can take these three columns and really dig into them. Now, we are going to do one more session in this consultation. And that's actually going to give you a taste of what I'm talking about in the groups. A lot of times in the groups, it's about assessing what's the problem here. Which column has acted up most and in what way? And what's the action step required? So when we meet next time, we're going to go through those action steps. Just more generally, we're going to give you some ideas about them. And then we'll set a plan for what happens next. We don't have to do that in session next time because I don't want to put you on the spot with that. But when we're done with that, we're going to kind of pause together and think, now what do you need? Because if we think about this third sentence, and you're going to care about you the way you care about your son, you need what you need. I don't know what that is yet. You might, and I don't know, and maybe you need to think about it. But I do know you deserve to have it. You really do.
Do people have a hard time figuring out or trying to think of what that is because you haven't done it for so long?
Maybe at first, but I actually find that the columns organize your thinking about you and what's happened to you and what needs to happen so well that I think they usually have some clarity about it. Sometimes they have conflict about doing it.
Right.
But I don't think that they usually have a lack of clarity. Sometimes they're afraid to see the clarity.
Yeah.
Seems like that rings true for you somewhere in there.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for me about the power column or where we're at in this process just at the moment?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is really exciting that, you've seen so much about me and we've figured so much out, and now it's translating into tangible steps that I can take for this to change.
Yeah, and listen, the primary things we'll talk about next time, because you've done a lot of the emotions column work before, So you can still use that for acute onsets and upticks in symptoms. But we are going to essentially focus more on the other two columns, which you didn't know about much because I'm the one who incorporates them.
Yeah,
one is we're going to
perfect.
bring doubt way down, which we've already done some of. And then we're going to help you learn how to harness power and understand it and live that way. So we are on a great path, and I'm very excited to keep up this work with you, Katie.
All right, me too. Sounds great.
Okay, thanks again for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Okay. As I was doing the core narrative with Katie, I was very pleased because we were getting so far with things, but I was thinking, there's going to be some people who are going to watch this and think, I don't know, I can't see with a razor sharpness the way Katie did which word's missing and which one isn't. A lot of the emotions work that Katie did even before coming to see me has contributed to her being able to do that. I don't want anybody out there to worry, though. When you come to see me, even if you have no idea, you can feel what's right in you. And not only that, you couldn't help it even if you tried. You'll hesitate if I say something that does not ring true. So it's in you. It's always in you. We have to remember in the power column, the symptoms are a communication. They're trying to tell you who you are. This was a great example of Katie receiving that information and seeing how she suffered. And when we got it into those really emotionally resonant words, you could see it meant more to her. And this is part of the reason that you actually won't need to memorize your core narrative or go back to it all the time. You're going to integrate it into you. Katie's starting to do that. When she does that more and she decides to live that way ferociously, she's going to be fine. Those symptoms are going to go away because they are in part a communication. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.